This lecture digs into Chapter 6, the 4 domains of leading like Jesus, from Lead Like Jesus Revisited by Ken Blanchard. This chapter explores the holistic approach to leadership that Jesus models, which involves integrating the heart, the head, the hands, and our habits. Consider each of these 4 domains to understand how they shape and influence our lives as Christian leaders. Each one is essential to being a leader who genuinely will reflect Christ's example. It's not enough to lead in 1 or 2 of these areas. The call to lead like Jesus involves our entire selves, bringing consistency and alignment in our faith and our actions. Let's walk through these 4 domains together and examine how each one contributes to a model of transformational leadership and life coaching. Domain 1 is the heart of leadership. That's our motivation. The heart is first. Everything else is influenced by what flows out of our hearts. This domain deals with our motivation as leaders and how our core values influence why we do what we do. Jesus continually reminds us that true leadership begins in our heart, emphasizing motives over actions. So what is motivating you, and is it biblical? It's easy for leaders to be driven by self-interest, whether that's a desire for power or recognition, or success as we imagine it, or control. However, leading like Jesus requires a fundamental shift from these motives toward something deeper, a servant's heart. When we examine the heart, we ask ourselves, am I leading to serve or to be served? Am I seeking to advance my own interests, or am I genuinely looking to benefit others? Am I interested in their success? In Matthew 20:28, Jesus states that he came not to be served, but to serve. This verse encapsulates the heart of Jesus' leadership style. His motivation was love and a commitment to serving others, even at great personal cost. Blanchard challenges us to inspect our own hearts and ensure that our leadership reflects this sacrificial, service-oriented heart. Domain number 2 is the head of leadership. That's our beliefs, our values, perspectives. Our thinking shapes how we interpret our role as leaders and how we respond to those we lead. Christian leaders must hold a clear and biblical perspective on leadership. For Jesus, leadership was never about wielding power over others, but about guiding, teaching, nurturing those that he led. And this perspective can feel counterintuitive, especially in environments where success is often measured by position or influence or results. Adopting a mindset that aligns with Jesus will shape our perspectives. In following his teachings, we view our leadership role not as a position of authority, but as a place of responsibility and stewardship. For example, Jesus often used parables that emphasize the importance of stewardship, like the parable of the talents, where each servant is accountable for how they use what's been entrusted to them. As a Christian life coach, he is entrusting something he treasures to you. And what is that? It's people. Jesus' view on leadership is centered on adding value to others, not asserting our dominance. By letting his perspective shape our vision, we can reframe leadership as a platform to empower others rather than to control them for our own personal gain. Domain 3 is the hands of leadership. That's our actions and behaviors. This domain is all about our actions and habits. We remember that wisdom is application of truth to changed life. The hands of leadership requires wisdom. That's the part of leadership it's visible to others, and often it's what people think of when they talk about leadership. It's what we do. Our actions should flow from the right motivations, which is our heart, based on a clear vision of leadership from our heads. In other words, our actions need to reflect our beliefs and motives. Integrity means that we believe in our hearts and understand in our minds what is manifested and made visible by our actions, and especially in how we treat others. Scripture puts servant leadership on display for all of us to see. Jesus exemplifies this beautifully in the Gospel of John, where he sits by the campfire with Nicodemus to coach him on life with God, John 3. And where Jesus was asked, "Where are you staying?" and he answered with, "Come and see," followed by spending the entire day with those disciples who had asked him that in John 1. And also where he washes the feet of his disciples, John 13. This act takes the posture of a servant to show that true leadership involves humility and self-sacrifice. When we lead with our hands in a Christ-like way, we are willing to take on even the tasks that seem beneath us if it serves others. This doesn't mean we abandon authority, but we use it to support and build others up rather than to elevate ourselves. Our hands need to mirror Jesus' servant-hearted actions. This should be a key insight for you. As leaders, we might ask ourselves, are my actions building others up? Am I willing to do the difficult, humble work that demonstrates my commitment to those I lead? Domain number 4 is the habits of leadership. That's our daily practices. Finally, we come to these habits. Habits are the routines, the disciplines that anchor our leadership. They're consistent practices that keep us connected to God, centered in His Word, and growing in Christ-like behavior. It's our habits and scheduling and time and task management, our spiritual disciplines and consistency that we make progress ourselves. And in making progress ourselves, we're better able to show others what progress should look like. After all, people look to someone like us that they can look up to. Who is looking up to you, my friend? For Jesus, the habits of solitude, prayer, and Scripture were essential. Throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus regularly withdrawing to pray, even at times when his ministry was thriving or when the crowds were pressing in. These practices were not just a nice addition to his life. They were his source of strength and guidance. A dear pastor friend of mine once told me how he started every day with an hour of prayer. And I asked him, well, what on earth do you do on those days when you're so far behind and facing stress and pressure from too many problems to solve on that day? And he said, well, on those days I pray for 2 hours. It is not possible to overstress the importance of spiritual disciplines. There are several habits a leader and a coach must develop, but none are as important as spiritual disciplines if you're a Christian. Leaders need to develop habits that keep their hearts, heads, and hands aligned with Christ's example. And this might include regular prayer and reflection, Bible study, or times of fasting. And these practices help us to recalibrate and focus on what truly matters, enabling us to lead from a place of spiritual depth rather than human effort alone. Maintaining these habits requires intentionality and consistent purpose. Leadership is challenging, and without consistent spiritual practices and good life habits, it's easy to slip into patterns of pride, impatience, and self-reliance and lack of productivity. By adopting habits that deepen our relationship with God, we equip ourselves to lead in a way that honors Him even during difficult seasons. And the habits are not limited to spiritual disciplines. We have to also have good habits in every area of our life, including our goal setting, our task management, setting good priorities, and doing the daily things necessary to make continuous progress every day. In summary, each of these 4 domains, the heart, the head, the hands, and the habits, represents an essential aspect of leading like Jesus. However, they're not meant to function independently. Rather, they work together, creating a cohesive, Christ-centered approach to leadership. It's all of the above. The heart shapes our values and motives, ensuring we lead with love and service. The head guides our perspective, helping us see leadership as a form of stewardship rather than control. The hands reflect our commitment to apply what we've learned and serve others through tangible actions which is called wisdom. And habits ground us in daily disciplines that keep us aligned with God's will so that we can stay on target and keep moving forward. When all 4 domains are integrated, our leadership becomes a powerful witness to the character of Christ. We embody what it means to lead like Jesus, not just in words, but in every area of our lives. And so consider how you can each implement the 4 domains of leading like Jesus. This holistic approach asks more of us than simply following a set of rules. It requires a genuine transformation of our heart, mind, and actions. You should examine each domain regularly and invite God to shape and refine us as leaders. In closing, I want us all to remember that leading like Jesus is a journey, not a destination. We're all in the process of becoming more Christ-like in our leadership. We're not there yet. So commit yourself to the journey, asking God for help with a heart full of love, a mind aligned with His truth, hands that are ready to serve, and habits that will draw us closer to Him each day while getting the things done every day that will lead us towards progress and becoming that future you that you'll write about in your 10-year vision for yourself.